we're thrilled and honored to have today representatives from WKYC TV3. We had reached out to them before everything happened with the unrest, particularly in Cleveland over the weekend, because they have just adapted mightily in how they deliver news in the face of the pandemic. And now, in light of recent events, they're going to share with us how they exercise responsible broadcast journalism and cover a crisis, which we've experienced so many in the past several months. So first, let me introduce and welcome Micki Byrnes, General Manager of WKYC. She joined WKYC TV3 in 1997 as Director of Marketing, and she has risen in the ranks since that date. She's held broadcast management positions in Boston, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Orlando. Most recently, she was the recipient of the 2020 Cleveland Business Executive of the Year. Micki serves on a huge number of boards, is an incredibly engaged civic citizen, including that of the Cleveland Leadership Center, and she's a proud member of the class of Leadership Cleveland 2005. I also want to welcome Adam Miller, Director of Content at WKYC. There, he manages strategy and vision for their broadcast as well as their digital news operations. Previously, he was a senior producer on NBC's Today Show, and he's traveled across the globe covering everything from the Olympic Games to a royal wedding and the Haiti earthquake. He is a member of the Leadership Cleveland class of 2020. And Russ Mitchell, former anchor of CBS Weekend Evening News and CBS News Saturday Morning, and national correspondent for CBS. He came to Channel 3 as lead anchor in 2012. And what I love for any of you young people who are on the call, he began his career at age 17 as the nighttime switchboard operator at a TV station at his hometown of St. Louis. He too, like Adam, has traveled the globe covering the war in Bosnia, and yes, he did report from Ground Zero on 9/11, so covering crises are nothing new to him. And he is a proud member of Leadership Cleveland class of 2014. At this incredibly busy time, Micki, Adam, Russell, we're grateful for your generous time, and we look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Marianne, and hey, everyone. It's so nice to see some familiar faces and friends out in Zoom land. You know, when we were asked to do this initially, as Marianne mentioned, there were a lot of things that were in play with COVID in terms of everything from how you do a remote newscast to how you innovate in terms of coverage to how you deal with clarity and context. So there was a lot of things in play. And then obviously this past week, things became even more of a challenge in many ways, but never before has what we do, has local journalism been more important. We've seen and Adam and Russ will get into more specifics, but we've seen the number. I want to make sure I see faces here. We have seen the actual number of folks engaging with local news explode these past few months. Certainly when the pandemic first hit, the numbers were enormous. They've leveled off to a degree. As you might guess, in the mornings when people are now sleeping in or going for a walk rather than commuting, the morning numbers have dipped across the board, though we've seen actually a little bit of growth, a decent amount of growth. 11 o'clock numbers to the same degree. When there's a nice balance of news and people are still very interested to sort of set the day for the next day, those numbers are pretty strong. When they've sort of been hammered all week, there's a sense that people are done and they want to go to bed. So we've tried to ride that wave of emotion, and that's been the hardest part in all of these past few months, is how we try to, the tone is so important, and the tone changes every day, and how you try to gauge what people want and what they want to hear and what they don't want to hear. And there's so many variables to that, and people want different things. And so how do you, as a broadcast entity, with your goal of trying to serve the greater good, with your goal of trying to give everyone in your market what they need, how do you balance those very different backgrounds and concerns and passions and fears? And so it's been really interesting. I think some days we do a much better job than others, but for the most part, I've been incredibly proud of Russ and Adam and their leadership in the newsroom, and trying to do the right thing, even when it's not easy, even when it's uncomfortable. At the end of the day, when we've done our last Zoom, and got the Nightside crew ready to roll, and I have, maybe more glasses of wine than I should be having these days, and I'm just sort of going through the day, it's that question of, have we done everything we could to position ourselves and our staff to be safe, to be as factually correct as possible, to hopefully give some sort of optimism when it's warranted, to help lead out of this. I mean, there's so much we can do as a local broadcaster in terms of telling stories of the rebound, in terms of telling stories of businesses that are making it, in terms of celebrating people who are doing amazing things. And sometimes in the midst of the chaos, we don't do enough of that. And so I think that's a big part of where we need to go from here, on multiple levels. So it's kind of up here at the moment, and we'll get into more of the specifics. But I want to turn it over to Russ, because as Marianne mentioned, he's had a seat at the table for a seat at the desk for major events across the world and across the country, and here in Cleveland. He was only here, I think, 3 months when the Chardon shooting happened, or maybe not even 3 months, Russ, but whatever it was very tight. And so he had come to us, and then sort of it was thrown into the beginnings of a number of high-profile events here in Cleveland. But it was his network experience, and it was his sort of knowledge of the craft that I think helped put us in a really good place in terms of a news organization. So Russ, I know there's a lot here, but give us your thoughts on in terms of sort of where we are now and how we deal with context and clarity, and how we move forward from here.
Well, Micki, thank you very much. Marianne, thank you for the nice introduction. And it's great to see so many wonderful faces. I feel I should say I'm Russ Mitchell, and I am wearing pants, because I think you've heard the story about these anchors who no longer wear pants. But I can assure you that every night when you're watching, I am wearing pants. These, as Micki said, are incredibly, bizarre times. And we didn't have enough on our plate with the pandemic. Of course, the events over the weekend and last week have certainly amped up the game. Micki is right. Our job today, I think more than anything else, is to give you context and perspective. And Adam has been really good at keeping us on track here and keeping us honest in doing that. That means that when we give you the number of coronavirus deaths today, we give you some context. We tell you, how many happened yesterday, how many happened last week. Is there a trend? Which way are we going? And we try to get as many experts on as we can to give you that context. One thing that's been interesting to me is the advent of the governor's news conference at 2:00 in the afternoon. It has become must-see TV for so many people. And I remember when we first started airing them, we would air them every day at 2:00, and then I think we didn't air them for a couple of days. And people wrote in, people called and said, "Where are they? We want to see these." And those 90 minutes have become really 90 minutes of healing for people, and coming together and getting the latest information from these top officials. And it has been fascinating to me, not only that people have responded that way, and the numbers, Micki and Adam can add to this, but the numbers are incredible for daytime TV. A lot of people are interested. And also, and as a television station, it's a commitment. And again, I'm probably speaking out of my zone here, but for a local station to give up 90 minutes of airtime costs money. We don't make money in that. So that's a commitment that we're making, and also the other stations are making as well. So that, along with what we will do at 5, 6, and 7, and 11 o'clock is take what the governor said and And again, give that perspective, give, opposing voices a shout as well, because that's all part of this. And unfortunately, and this applies to every level of government. There used to be a time where an official would say something and that would be enough. Their words would carry enough weight that you didn't really need to do fact checks and things like that. Unfortunately, we have to do those things now, and unfortunately, that when we do those, it tends to make some people angry. But honestly, in the game we play today, in the journalism of today, if you do not give context and you do not give perspective, you are really not serving the viewer. And it's especially important with the advent of your phone and your computer, because all day long you see what's going on. You see what's happening in the world. I mean, you're getting alerts all day long. And despite what Adam says, I do not write those personally when they come to channel. But you're seeing that. So what we have to do is give you that kind of perspective to give you a reason to tune in. And also, I think it's our responsibility. The other thing that's happening these days in terms of tone, we more than ever have to be measured. We more than ever have to be true to ourselves. We more than ever have to let the viewer know that we are here, we're in control. We don't want to scare you. That is certainly the case with coronavirus. And that was certainly the case over the weekend with the looting and rioting that happened downtown. It is very easy in these situations as for us as newscasters and journalists to get caught up in the moment. You're sitting there, you're standing there, you're seeing destruction around you. It's very easy to forget that you are that voice of reason. You have to take that step back and give people that voice of calm. I saw it with our reporters in the field on Saturday. I think the two reporters on Saturday who we had covering the riots, I don't even know if they had covered a riot before. I'm not sure. But they were incredibly poised, and they didn't panic, and they did not incite anything, and they did not take sides. They did what they were supposed to do. My job in that role is to also take a step back and say to people, look, this is what happened. There was a peaceful protest downtown. There was a small group of protesters who took it to the next level. Again, important to add that context and perspective to let people know that it wasn't everybody down there doing what the small group of people were doing. And I'm very lucky, just personally, because as Micki said, in my past life at CBS, I got to see people in the country do that. I can tell you a story on 9/11. I was on the desk next to Dan Rather, and Tower 2, I believe, was the first tower that fell on 9/11. And in the back of your head, you're going, holy, whatever. I remember Dan Rather said Tower 2 falling, New York City, 2001, and for 5 minutes said nothing. And sometimes that's what you need. Just say nothing. That's all the context and perspective that people need. So when I look at my job, I look at people like that who I've been fortunate enough to watch over the years, who knew how to do this and knew how to let people know that, in a way, it's going to be okay, that we're in control here. This is going to be fine. We need to get through this together. That's the way I see my job today. That's the way I see the station's job as well. And again, I'm very lucky that I work with people who remind us of that every day.
Well said. Yeah. By the way, Russ and I don't normally match, but are you wearing shorts on Russ? It's shorts day, right?
I have real pants on today.
Okay. All right. Didn't get the memo. But no, I think, Russ is right. And I have to, again, thanks Bob and Marianne for organizing. Thrilled to be here. I think leadership is contagious, and I'm fortunate enough to work with two of the greatest between Russ and Micki. I mean, Micki on a daily basis, culture eats strategy for breakfast. We talk about that a lot. And boy, culture right now is more important than ever as we're covering these crises. And as we saw on Saturday, I mean, Russ is the best there is, right? I mean, I will brag on his, for him at that anchor desk during such a tumultuous situation to be so calm and that voice of reason. We are so fortunate as a city to have Russ here leading us through that. That is not an easy task. And I count my blessings every day to work with both of them. You know, I think right now we're seeing broadcast news specifically is really an archaic, ancient, sometimes stale industry. And we talk a lot about innovation. We talk a good game, but we rarely actually see it. And I think between the coronavirus and what's gone on over the last week, we've really seen innovation. You know, we were forced to get, well, I guess we had 180 people on a good day down at WKYC. And as Micki said earlier, I think we're down to about 10 to 12 over the course of 24 hours over the 7 days a week. So the fact that, you know, you're seeing inside, you know, Jim Donovan's barn and Maureen Kyle's living room. And, you know, what a crazy thing. TV is such an intimate medium to begin with, right? I mean, every day you guys are inviting Russ into your home, into your bedroom as you're going to sleep at night, and Savannah and Hoda into your room in the morning. It's such an intimate medium, and I think we forget about that sometimes. And so the fact that now, for the first time ever, the tables have turned, and it is the TV anchors and reporters who you trust and love, suddenly, you are being invited into their bedrooms and their homes. It's unbelievable, that connection. You don't get that in a push alert or in a magazine or in a newspaper. And that's something we don't take for granted. That's a really unusual thing. The number of TV studio home setups has been remarkable, right? I mean, I'd say, you know, Russ is driving that ship in studio every evening. Sarah Shookman, before she went on maternity leave, was broadcasting out of her basement. I mean, we were forced as a leadership team to think in the early days of the coronavirus, oh, you know, is this safe to keep Sarah Shookman in our facility? You know, we've done everything we can to make that building safe, but, you know, it's not worth it, right? So Sarah was one of the first people we asked to start broadcasting from home. And actually months ago, before COVID-19, we actually have a reporter, Amani Abraham. Amani Abraham actually has been reporting for WKYC out of her Las Vegas apartment for probably the last 6 months, and no one knows it. I mean, it was actually kind of the pre-COVID innovation that we're talking about. And, you know, Micki and I just had a conversation yesterday. It is a game changer in terms of how broadcasting moves forward. I mean, I love our TV station. I love the facility. Do we need it? We do. We definitely need it. But I think that it has changed the game across the board when you look at all different parts of the day and broadcasting in general. And actually, I think it raises the bar. Russ did a great series last week. We called it Clevelanders in Quarantine, where Russ caught up with native Clevelanders and what they're doing. Those are interviews I don't know that we would have chased down in a pre-COVID world. Russ sat down with Steve Harvey and the Russo brothers, and Betsy Kling caught up with Catherine Hahn, an actress from Cleveland, from the comfort of their homes. And I think that alone changes the game as we move forward, looking to do interviews and access. I think we can hold our team to a greater standard in terms of, why didn't you get that interview? Well, anyone can Zoom. All you have to do is hit record on a Zoom. You don't need to get Steve Harvey to a studio in Los Angeles. You don't need to get, I mean, that alone is an incredible, necessary, innovative piece of what we do. And I'm really excited about that moving forward. That access to guests and being able to be so nimble as an industry, it was so overdue. And that's something we're excited to keep with us as we move forward in a post-COVID world. I don't know if you've been watching our product, but we have a new news anchor who sits with Russ at 6 p.m. every night. Her name is Laura Queso. She's a phenomenal journalist. Came to us from Virginia Beach, I believe, originally from the Boston area. Really, really strong, talented journalist. And moved to Cleveland, was so excited to join our team. And we had to tell her that on the Monday that she was going to start and sit next to Russ Mitchell, that she wasn't allowed to enter the building. She moved to Cleveland, doesn't have any family here, no friends. Her husband isn't even here yet. And we said, Laura, you're going to have to stay in your apartment. She's living downtown, I think, at the Beacon, and you can't leave your apartment. It's like Rapunzel. She's stuck up there. She's got this beautiful long hair. She is stuck up there, and we can't get Laura out of her apartment. But we're doing it for her safety and for the safety of others. But again, we quickly got together a TV studio for Laura up there. And what a way to enter a new city and a new market and connect with an audience. But via her home studio, we've been fortunate enough to, we've taken every precaution necessary. We have moved her into the building in the last couple of weeks, and she's done a stellar job. But imagine moving to a new city right now during all this, starting a new job, trying to connect with a market. It's no easy task. But, you know, I think the biggest thing personally, when I think back on the last, what did you say, Marianne, 11 weeks? Is that how, I mean, it's remarkable to think about, is, you know, keeping everyone safe on our team. I mean, our job, of course, every day is to keep the community informed and engaged across platforms. But there's days, and I'm sure, Mick, you can probably agree, where I'm like, oh yeah, we have a show at 11. I mean, it's like, this weekend was a perfect example. I don't think I slept so concerned over the safety of our team members and their health and their sanity and their mental health. I mean, it takes such a toll on people between the stories and the crises that we are covering, and there's nothing more important to me than that, truthfully. We went from telling all of our crews that they had to be socially distanced, meaning, we got the team down to 10 people in our facility, but then moving forward, every reporter had to be paired with the same photographer on a daily basis, right? That was to help prevent or restrict any cross-pollination between team members and with COVID and whatnot. But even still, they had to travel in separate cars and stay 6 feet apart and do interviews 6 feet away from people and take every precaution necessary. Then the protests happened. The last thing we want to do is send someone solo into a protest. So then we juggle with, as a management team, of how do we keep people safe from COVID, distanced from their partners, but yet safe in these crowds where it doesn't seem, it is never been done before. The conversations we're having, covering one pandemic versus this other public health crisis, I will call it. I'm so proud of the team. I think we did a good job. I think we were very responsible. What we ended up doing was we made sure we mandated our teams could not be in the middle of the protests. They had to stay at a safe distance. You can still tell a story. And there was a point this weekend where I will say we did have to pull our crews out of the field because there was an uncomfortable incident where there was, I think, a bike thrown at a reporter, attempted to be thrown at a reporter. It got dicey, and it wasn't worth jeopardizing the safety of our team. And on top of that, they still told the stories that needed to be told. The beauty of social media, you could scrape elements from their pictures and video, vetting them, making sure they're accurate, do your Zoom interviews, get the pictures you need, but do it safely between, again, these two crazy stories that have unfolded. So, I don't think our job has ever been more important. The 6 p.m. show that Russ broadcasts every day, we call it What Matters Most. And I truly believe it's what matters most in Cleveland. If you want to weed out all the white noise and the news that you don't need to care about, watch our 6 p.m. broadcast, because on a nightly basis, I think we do a damn good job of living up to the standard of what matters most. And again, if you're producing a show called What Matters Most, you better believe that when you go through that rundown every night, Russ starts deleting. That doesn't matter. I don't think we need that, but it's true. And it's a great brand filter internally as much as it is externally. And what a privilege to be able to tell, two of the most important stories of our lives in a city that we all love. So thrilled to be able to do that.
Nice job, Adam. I can leave you guys with one story that's sort of indicative, and I'm doing this for Rear Admiral Parks, who I saw. Mike, who is, as you know, the CEO of the Red Cross, but we first got to know him when he was Admiral of the Coast Guard. We don't have a lot of veterans on our staff. As many of you know, there are not a lot of folks who currently serve in this generation. But almost 2 years ago, I got a resume from somebody who was had come to take a job at GE, and the GE job moved to Boston, and he was just getting out of Fort Campbell, and he didn't have a job in Cleveland, and somehow, in the middle of the night, I get this resume. Anyway, so I'm looking at it. It's like West Point grad, Army platoon leader, special ops, Chinook helicopter pilot. And I'm like, if you can fly a helicopter, well, damn it, you can probably do it with a live truck, right? So I brought him in to interview for this news ops manager position. And he's been unbelievable. He's been a great hire. He had so he's in charge of all the crews and the engineers and stuff. Within weeks, he had photographers doing push-ups in the hallway. Not really, but you know what I mean. He had people organized. He had things really sort of very mission-driven, and which is great. And he worked well on a bunch of big projects, over the years with transmitters and all that kind of stuff. Well, about however many weeks it's been, like the second week of March, when things were really starting to bubble up, he came to Adam and I and said, so here's the deal. We're going to move everybody out of the building. And we were like, you are out of your effing mind. I'm not moving people out of this building. And he goes, no, this is going to happen. And this is the plan. We have a red team, a green team, a yellow team. We have separate entrances. We have separate kitchens. We have separate microwaves. We have separate bathrooms. And this is the way people are in. And this is the control room's locked down and master control's locked down. And I've already ordered all these masks and I'm figuring out a way. And we were like, dude, you're out of your mind. And then we were, okay, so we started looking at it and we ordered the stuff. We ordered the ring lights and we ordered a bunch of things. And meanwhile, I'm saying to my accounting guy, oh, don't pay any attention to these expenses. I'm just putting these through, la, 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 la. And then, I don't know, 5 days later or 6 days later, the governor goes, and we're closed. And corporate went, and you're all out of your building. And we were like, oh, here's our plan. This is the red, green, and blue plan. We were, I mean, it was like, if I had known what I needed in the case of a pandemic was a Bronze Star winning special ops guy, I would have hired him like a million years ago. But it made me realize that these are the times that bring out really interesting things in your staff. There are skills your staff has that you have no idea they have. And now's the time that many of them really step up. And now's the time where some of the people that you thought were your stars don't step up. And so it's, you know, a long way of saying, as a leader, I've learned a lot about my team, you know, in these past few months, and the people who show up and the people who don't, you know. And moving forward, I think Marianne and I have talked about this before. You know, what I have to now do is figure out how to lift up and motivate, and to Adam's point about culture. There's probably like 4 different verticals now. There's the people who are in the station who have worked their ass off and who are exhausted, but they're going. But they need, you know, they need a break. They need something. There's the people who, but they feel valued, I think. And Russ, I would, you know, you guys have sort of a bubble around you, safety bubble around you, but you've pulled really together tightly as a team now. And you feel valued, I would think. I have people who were sent home who don't feel as valued, even though they are. It's just that their jobs were such they could do them more easily from home. I have people who are desperate to come back. And then I have people who are afraid to come back. And so how we manage each of those entities is going to be really interesting moving forward. So it's definitely a learning experience for all of us. Russ or Adam, any more final thoughts before we jump into questions? And we're going to pick on people, just FYI, if you don't raise your hand. So,
well,
Russ?
Micki made me the health task force coordinator. Adam made me the health task force coordinator at night. So I have to walk around and make sure everyone is adhering by these rules. Micki talked about, I started calling myself Barney Fife, and the staff had no idea who that was. So then I said, I'm Dwight Schrute, and then everybody got it. So I can tell you that it's taken very seriously in the building, you know, how we conduct ourselves and how we stay safe.
No, it's true.
Yes, and I will say Micki is the kind of leader who literally, she almost physically had to be dragged out of the building. The last possible day we were on a Zoom with our corporate, and we were all in our offices, and they literally looked and they said, why are you all in your building? So no, but it was the right call. And yeah, I feel great about the plan, and I think everyone's done a great job of staying safe and healthy.
And yeah, instead I'm in my grown son's room with his old snowboarding trophies and posters, because it's the quietest room in the house. Doesn't look professional, but at least it's nice and quiet. All right, well, why don't we open it up? Nick, do you want to, are there any specific questions, or do we just start to jump on people?
Well, we can definitely do the jumping on people, but we have had some questions come in.
Okay.
And so the first one is, with so many of your team members no longer in the building and in an environment that is inherently collaborative, what have you all been doing to connect your team, make sure that they stay engaged, and that the camaraderie that exists within your newsroom moves forward?
Adam, you want to start with that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's our greatest challenge, no doubt. What I have found the most helpful is it's daily Zooms. I have my own little calendar here on scratch paper where I literally am making sure that I'm in touch with at least 2 different team members a day, and one-on-ones in Zoom. I like the FaceTime because again, I think culture is everything. In addition, and we found some other fun things. I've scheduled what I call Guess Whom Zoom, and once a week I have a different surprise journalist show up in our editorial meetings for a few minutes of just let off some steam, talk about their experience. We had Keir Simmons from the London Bureau. We had Erica Hill from CNN, Russ's old cohort. We had Chanel Jones and Craig Melvin. So I think that those little things, kind of like what we're doing here to a degree, but just to kind of give people a break from the day-to-day has been incredibly helpful. We've done a couple Zoom happy hours too. And I think that, again, that FaceTime is everything.
You know, the sales department has their weekly Zoom, but they also do they're more fun than we are. They ran around and dropped off wine on everybody's, and there's a theme, obviously, dropped off wine on everybody's doorstep. They did what do they call it, a ding and dash or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and the marketing department has done, they play, games, on stuff. We had a really painful culture club concert that was a couple Fridays ago. That person is not going to be in charge of music selection moving forward. But no, I'm teasing. It was very sweet. But these they were sort of, oh, these guys are awesome. We see them at the bars all the time. I'm like, okay, sure, yeah, fine. Pay them $100. Sure, we'll do it. It was like, I'm like, oh yeah. But I'm like, more wine. I think you look for the opportunities to connect. And I think the other piece of it is to Adam's point, is the one-on-one, is picking up the phone or doing a quick email or whatever. And really, are you okay? We have people who have all sorts of personal issues dealing with all this. We have all these moms who are home trying to be working full time and dealing with kids. You guys get it. You're living it. You know all these challenges. And even for our clients and stuff, I'm surprised. I send a lot of notes to clients, over the weekend, because there's nothing else to do. Just sort of checking in, and they're people too. They're like, oh, thank you for checking in. Yes, I'm concerned about my business. I'm afraid that I may not come back. What are you hearing? I mean, just the more personal touches you can do, the better.
And I can say management has been fantastic about that. A few weeks ago, I guess it was around Easter time, I came home on a Saturday, and there was a bottle of champagne on my front door. I thought the coolest Easter bunny in the world must have come to shake it. And then I found out it was Adam Miller who had done that. So I really appreciate that. And they've done a great job of keeping us all engaged and letting us know that we appreciate it and we're all in this together.
You hate my music choices, Russ. I know every time.
I would never say that, Micki.
Yes. So I do a daily note to staff, and I don't know, we started with some kind of music theme. I guess it was because it was miserable, and I did "Here Comes the Sun" or something, and then so it's evolved. There's always a theme to the music, and the problem is I'm terrified I'm going to do some YouTube link that like goes to pornography or something because I'm just grabbing it off the internet. But it's been fun to just daily remind folks that we're here for them.
We've had a couple of questions come in about you all as individuals. So on one hand, you all work for a news organization and you are putting out the news in a balanced way. But obviously as individuals, the events that are happening out in the world, whether they be COVID, whether they be the current protests, impact you personally. So how are you able to, as an individual, share what you think needs to be shared while also dealing with the personal impact that it may cause?
Russ, do you want to jump that, or do you want me to start?
I mean, you learn in this business, especially when you're on air, to compartmentalize things when you have to do it, and you tend to take that box and put it over here. When you're on air or trying to put things together. However, the perspective is important. In my case, I have a 12-year-old daughter in New York City, and I worry about her every minute of the day. She's fine. She told me the other day she hadn't left their apartment in a month, and she was totally fine with that. So she's being very careful. She, like most kids, is out of school and doing Zoom school. But that when you talk about how things personally affect you, I think of that when I'm thinking about how parents are keeping their kids safe, because I think about my child as well. So and my other daughter lives in Indianapolis, and she's been working from home for 2 months. She works in marketing for a U.S. track and field, and nobody's doing track and field events these days. So every day I'm talking to her and telling her it's going to be okay, and I know you, like everybody else, is concerned about your job and all that kind of stuff. So those kind of things, those personal things that you deal with, when you're thinking about it, it worries you, whatever, you compartmentalize it in one way. But I think for those of us who are presenting stories to the world, it certainly affects our thinking.
And it's hard not to. I mean, I think Dennis and Ginny know, but My daughter is a pediatric ER doc, and she tested positive, gosh, probably 6 weeks ago now. And luckily, knock on wood, she had a mild case and she was back to work within 3 weeks or so. But that, you know, it does take, it does do things to your head in terms of, you know, how you present stuff. And, you know, I do remember right before, not to get too personal here, but right before the whole concussion thing blew up, you know, in the NFL and kids sports, I don't know, when was that, 10 years ago or whatever, 8 years ago, my son, the snowboarder, was competing nationally. We were in Copper Mountain in Colorado, and he took a really bad fall and had a really bad concussion. And I didn't know anything about concussions. And I literally, you know, let him play lacrosse the next, it was like stupid. I didn't know. But when I realized I didn't know, I came marching back to the news department and went, we are doing a 10-part series on concussions. And we did. And, you know, I kind of like abused my power, but I did, you know, because we didn't, it hadn't blown up yet, and it hadn't become what it is now. And so I think you can't separate who we are from what we do. And there's definitely things I will ask the staff either to look into or whatever, but, you know, we're dealing with this right now. I mean, you know, we're talking to our Black journalists in the building, and we're trying to have the conversations, and we're trying to ask the questions that open up more dialogue. You know, I mean, I think we're a pretty tight team, but I'm not going to presume I understand the frustrations and anger that people are going through. And I know there's lots of times they would like to retweet something or repost something or really speak their minds, yet they're doing in their roles, you know, they can't to the degree they would like. So how do I help them? How do we all come to terms with that? You know, and how do I have those open conversations and not feel defensive, like I've made mistakes and I don't acknowledge? And how do they feel like they have the freedom to really have those conversations without being afraid of being fired? And, you know, it's, if nothing else, we're all really thinking much more deeply about things. Should we have been doing it all along? Of course we should have. Is this brought it to a head? I think so. The mayor, it was interesting. I was on a Zoom last week. The mayor spoke to the board of Destination Cleveland and the Sports Commission and DCA. And he talked a lot about what the city was doing. This is, again, over the last weekend. But one of the things he said that really stood out to me was, he said, what people don't understand is if we just go back to normal, then we will have failed. If we just go back to normal, we will have failed. We have to build in a way moving forward that changes things. And so, you know, when I've talked to my staff about that, I'm like, we have these powerful platforms. We have a voice. We have a tool to connect with people. What do we do to make things better? And not just talk about it and not just say, we're here with you. I mean, what do we physically, mentally, emotionally, content-wise do? And we're having those conversations now. Do we pick one particular vertical? As many of you who know Margaret Bernstein, who's our Director of Advocacy and Community Initiatives, she's very passionate about literacy and education. And you know, is that our track? And we just do a lot more and bang a bigger drum, or do we do other stuff? I was looking at the what came out of Cleveland Rising, and there were like 8 or 9 verticals for the sake of discussion that came out of that. And one was tech access for families. You know, is that something to get behind? So a long way of saying to the questioner, we can't separate it completely, but what we have to do is internalize it within our building in a way that helps us move forward.
Well said. The only other thing I'd add is, I think if you're in this industry, for whatever reason, this industry breeds a certain type of person, right? For better or for worse. And I think one of the things that struck me over the weekend was I was blown away by how I heard from nearly everyone on our staff saying, can I come in? What can I do? From Russ raising his hand Saturday morning, I'll be in. Sunday, Russ, I'll come in. Russ, I want you to get the rest. Love that Russ wants to come in on Sunday. We also want Russ to rest. But that was so impressive to me. And again, I think there's an instinct, for better or for worse, that we often like to run into that story head on, no matter what challenges or internal struggles we're feeling or facing. And again, one of the struggles with that and challenges is in a protest. And as the riots emerged, despite some of these journalists' instinct to run right into the middle of it, we got to keep them safe. And it's fighting every instinct as a journalist to, I know you want to be in the middle of that story, but don't do anything that would jeopardize your safety. Take a beat, come a few steps back. But it breeds a certain type of person.
I agree.
Thank you for that. So Adam, you shared something earlier that I think really resonated, in that right now we're dealing with really national stories, but they're also so hyper local, and folks are really tuned into local news. So I'm curious from the three of you, what role can local news play in helping to bridge a divide that is becoming more and more evident as the days go on?
No, it's a great challenge, and again, a great privilege that we get to conquer that challenge and figure out ways to embrace it each day. I mean, I think a big piece of that is making sure that we have the right voices being heard. I think that's something we talk about every day in terms of telling these stories. And looking to bridge the divide. How do our shows look each day? Russ and I just got off the editorial call a couple hours ago, and you kind of take a step back and you look, all right, so Monica's doing this and Rachel's going to go that, but is every part of this story being told? Are we getting every voice in there that needs to be in there? And if not, what do we need to change? And I think it's super important, especially during times like this, to bounce ideas around the room, right, around the Zoom, and getting a diverse set of faces and eyes and ears on it to make sure now more than ever is that valuable to make sure that we are doing each story justice and telling it the right way. Russ, I mean, what do you think?
I would totally agree with that. The other thing I would add is, and you said this, I go back to context. I mean, it's just so important for us to give you the full scope of the story and give you a perspective of not only why this is happening today, but why it happened yesterday and what was done about this yesterday and why that doesn't apply today. That type of coverage, that type of responsibility is what I think we can do to kind of bridge that gap. And again, you're all day long, you're getting this stuff on your phone. You're getting this stuff on your computer. By the time you see us at 5, 6, and 11 o'clock or 7, 11 o'clock, you know the gist, you know the headline of something. It's our job to kind of fill in those blanks, and hopefully we'll give you a full idea of what that story is about.
That's right. We talked. There's two ways to do this. One is there's like this. You could call it inform me, and then there's make me smarter. And I think that, to Russ's point, your push alerts all day long that's informing you, right? That you're getting the news you need. But what I think we do at 3 News quite well, and something that we should continue to push to even do better, is the make me smarter piece. And it's to take it beyond the push alert. Let's get that expertise, get that expert perspective, and let's give people that insight that they maybe didn't have before they watched our show.
I totally agree. And I must tell you, I think all the stations are doing a really good job. I mean, I talked to the other GMs. We talked about, when initially the police were not going to let us in the curfew area. And actually, general manager of Channel 19, Eric Schrader, was the one who sent a note to the mayor, a really well written. And we talk not often, but we work on a number of projects together. We all do Harvest for Hunger together. We talk. We talked when the RNC came, and just in terms of keeping our crews safe and all that kind of stuff. But I am always impressed with the work I see on other stations and the commitment they have to make the kind of changes that we're all talking about. And people go, well, they're your competitor. No, they're not. I mean, in the big picture, our competitor is Hulu and Netflix and and video games and whatever. What's good for local news is for all of us to do well and to have that sort of myriad of voices out there, and each of us have a certain strength in certain demographics, and so I'm happy to see that the increased news viewing, has actually spread across, all the stations, which is good to see. And I don't know, it's the rumors of our death have been greatly exaggerated, or whatever that quote was that I'm trying to remember clearly. And it's nice to see the reemergence of viewership, but also to a degree trust. We've seen a lot of research these past few months about who consumers are trusting. And obviously, when you look at the national cable outlets, it's very, and you look at, certain other social stuff, and everyone has their sort of agenda, understandably so. But the local newscast, and it changes from market to market. I would argue in Cleveland, it's a little bit higher than it is in a New York or a larger, maybe more cynical market. I don't know. It's hard to say, but that makes me feel good that people are believing us when we verify stuff and when we bring the experts in and that kind of stuff. But it's very easy to to make mistakes. And for those of you who jumped on early, we posted something yesterday on social that was a mistake, and we're going to be dealing with that now, I think, for a little bit. And we took a side. We didn't mean to take a side. It was just a young producer who posted the wrong thing. But that being said, you spend all this time trying to build your brand and your integrity and your commitment and your relationship with the audience, and it doesn't take much to blow it. So, and especially when things are moving so quickly, we have to be ever more careful.
Well, Micki, Adam, Russ, thank you so much. This was fantastic, and I definitely appreciate, and I hope that all on the call appreciate the work that you all are doing for Cleveland. Marianne, I'll turn it back to you to close.
Thank you, Nick. And Russ, Adam, Micki, Cleveland is really fortunate to have such dedicated and professional journalists, and three who are so incredibly invested in the community. So thank you for all that you do. You talk about how the news is intimate, that we invite you into our living rooms and bedrooms on a regular basis. I feel like you've just invited us into your thinking processes and how you make decisions. And to Adam's point, this makes us smarter and makes us better consumers of news. So thank you.